Well, welcome. It is 9 o'clock at night. If you are joining us, this is the teenager version of talking about, well, it's just a little catch up in the middle of your week. Is anyone else? It feels like a middle of the week, but it's only Monday. It is, Tari. That's why you need a drink. That's why it's Drinks with Rachel. I hope you have a drink. You are relaxed. Your teenager is somewhere around, potentially in bed, potentially not, potentially talking to you right now. If so, hi! It's good to see you. Your parents really love you. And we are doing our first Facebook parenting night, I guess, because we've been doing this watch party thing, and we really enjoyed having a consistent place where we could come together and meet, sometimes in our pajamas. If you're like me, you have your pajama bottoms on, but still your daytime top. And we just really wanted a place to come together and just get a little top up, because it's hard sometimes to get to a course or to get out in an evening. And sometimes you just need 20 minutes to sit with someone and just take a breath. And so tonight's a breath. And we really felt like we wanted to do something particularly for parents of teenagers, because sometimes when we are parenting our younger kids, then they transition into teenagers, and it's hard sometimes to take the thoughts of a kid and apply it to teenagers. And we thought this would be a great chance to do that. So if you are still awake at 9 o'clock at night, I honor you and I'm impressed. This week, this month, we're talking about sleep problems. And I thought it was really important that we kept doing it with teenagers because we never stop parenting, ever. And our teenagers, just like our kids when they're children, struggle with sleep sometimes. And we are still powerful in their lives, and we're still powerful in helping them cope with their sleep. This month, we're doing sleep problems. But next month, we're doing beauty and manliness, and we're talking about how to help our kids wrestle with this world that tells them what is beautiful and what isn't, and what makes a man and what isn't, and where God is and all of that. We'll be doing that next month on the 10th Monday, just like this one, because there's only one 10th Monday in a month. But this month we're talking about sleep. And I think it's really important that this is something we continue to talk to our kids about, particularly as they begin to find their own patterns of going to sleep and when they go to sleep and how they do. They begin to grasp more of their powerfulness in managing their own lives. And as they learn to manage their own lives, there's still things that they need to grasp onto, particularly about that really important thing about sleep. As you may know, teenagers developmentally, just feel like shout out face, developmentally, teenagers need an enormous amount of sleep. And so I just want to call this out to you. They do brain-wise actually go through a period where they need more sleep because their brains are growing and they're developing and all the hormones and stuff. And so if you're finding your teenager sleeping a lot more, they are not always being lazy. Sometimes it's because they actually do need a lot of sleep. And sometimes they don't understand that. They want to stay up later and they want to still get up and go to school. And actually their bodies need a lot of sleep. And so beginning to share that with them is really important. When you have a teenager, as you know, how you parent them shifts, and talking to them about topics becomes less straightforward. As a 9-year-old or a 7-year-old, you can sit them down and be like, I'd like to talk to you about this, and they'll generally listen. And teenagers are on their own journeys, and so how we influence and how we talk about topics is just a different skill that you are already developing. And as you find how you and your kid interact with best, talking about sleep is a really important thing. We talk about windows a lot in Parenting for Faith, about creating windows into your life. And I think it's really important that we talk to our kids about sleep and nightmares and dreams and all of those things, because they may not still call us at 3 o'clock in the morning like they used to when they were 4. And some 17-year-olds will and some 17-year-olds won't, but we want them to be as equipped as we want our 3-year-olds to be. And so some of it is saying, I don't know if you have nightmares. Do you ever have nightmares? Because I still have nightmares. And I had a bad one last night, doozy of one last night. And to tell them about your weird, your weird nightmares, and to say, you woke up and your heart was beating and you didn't know what to do. And so whenever you have nightmares, you put on music, or whenever you have nightmares, you get up and you read scripture, or whenever you have nightmares, you lay in bed for an hour and a half freaked out and then try to get to sleep and then make lists and then get up, and then whatever you do to normalize for them that it's okay that they struggle with sleep. And that by creating windows into your life, you're saying, this is how I cope with those sleep things with God. This is what I do. And that's a really vital part of parenting for them, because they might not ask, hey, I just had this nightmare last night and I struggled to get back to sleep again and I couldn't find my peace with Jesus. How did you find your peace with Jesus? They might not ask that question, but they do have that question. And sometimes as parents of teenagers, to begin to create windows into our life allows permission for a conversation that they really need. So tell your stories of struggling to go to sleep, and tell your stories of still being afraid. Like, I'm going to admit this on Facebook. I still sometimes, if I'm home alone, but if I'm home alone and I do I'm fine, I don't need to turn on the light. So I'm home alone, husband and kid are gone somewhere, and I'll go to the toilet and I flush the toilet, and still, I remember this when I was 5 and it still happens to me at 40. I'll flush the toilet and then all of a sudden I'll get desperately afraid, like the toilet monster is going to get me. I don't know why. So then I run out of the bathroom. Does anyone else have that? Please, Facebook world, affirm me here. The flushing the toilet fear of getting out of your bathroom. I know so many people who still have these as adults. We're people too. And to let them know that it's okay that our brains do that is a really useful thing for our kids to know. So share your stories, but also share how you cope with it when you're afraid in the middle of the night. Because if they don't know coping skills, if they don't have the skills to do it, then they are sort of at a loss. But if you say, you know what, I find really useful. When I was a teenager, I listened to worship every night because it just helped turn my eyes to God again. Or whether you say, you know, I just keep a Bible, and so if I ever just can't get it out of my head, I turn on my light and I just read my Bible till I get too tired and I fall asleep, because it's not like a fiction book. That means I'll get sucked in. But it's something that just reminds me of who God is, and I lift my eyes up and I do that. Your stories and your coping mechanisms are really useful. To have that conversation at dinner or to have people over is a really powerful thing. We talked in the last session with the 5 to 11s that also explaining, you know, the physiology of what happens when you're sleeping and how your brain's processing your day and it's clearing away all the gunk and it's trying to remember everything. And so your brain sometimes, in laying down the memories, links stuff together and pulls stuff up to look at, and nightmares become a jumble, and sometimes we can overthink them. And so if you wake up afraid, then you can just put it out of your head and find peace again in the way that you and God find peace most. And that may take some experimentation. And if you need some help experimenting, I'm always here. And so to really enable that is a really important thing. It's also, in working with a lot of teenagers as a youth pastor, a lot of their sleep problems sometimes were about fear, but a lot of it was about stress. And that sort of, not fear of the dark, but fear of tomorrow, and that sort of heart-thumping stuff of what's going to happen, and am I going to do this? And that sort of stuff is really hard for kids to cope with. And it sort of comes out at night. It's like when you're finally alone with yourself, then a lot of your fears come up and your stresses come up. And that's really helpful, again, to talk about, to say, you know, nighttime is a time where your brain is beginning to process. And often that's, you know, where your stress comes up. How do you cope with stress? How do you find peace? And you can talk about all the different ways, whether that, you know, you've heard of or other people do it. I know some people make a list and they can just list things so that it's not in your brain. There's this thing about brains that they have open loops. If you're trying to remember it, then you struggle to get to sleep. So if you write it down, then your brain can relax. I know somebody who just lists it to God and then tells God to like highlight one of the things that are actually important for me to write down. And so it's like her and God make a list at nighttime. But it's also encouraging them to chat to God. If you're ever just so stressed that you're just worried and you find yourself in a worry spiral, then just tell God all of your worries and then say, okay, God, how are you going to help me with that? And then ask God to do that. And you just wait. And God will always respond to you. He will always help you. And sort of helping them cope and manage that stress. You can write phrases together. I knew one teenager who was really struggling with like a lot of just angst about his day. And he was a writer. And so we encouraged him to read the Psalms, which are excellent sort of rants. I love them. They remind me so much of some of the really articulate teenagers that I've worked with. The Psalms, Psalm 88 is amazing. It's like, my friends hate me and they turn their back on me and oh God, I just want to die. I'm so sad. I mean, they're excellent. There's no upside to Psalm 88. It's just like a bleh, someone really sad. And then to enable them to say like people, that's how people talk to God. They just bleh to God. And you can, I'm sure you can find a Psalm that echoes your heart, but you know what? Feel free to write your own stuff to God. If you have a writer kid, help them. Tell them you can always write to God and be like, this is exactly how I feel. It's about enabling them to authentically connect with God in whatever they're dealing with at the time, however they are on a search for peace. That's really what it is. Whether it's fear or stress, it's helping them be powerful in their search for peace. Another thing that teenagers need is a theology of the night. If you I didn't do this when they were younger. It's something that I've only begun to discover in working with lots of families, and also working with teenagers is often we don't really know what the night is for. And so nighttime just becomes this thing to endure. You know, you go to sleep, you have to go to sleep, but you'd much rather be watching videos. And then you finally get to sleep and then you're tired the next day and it just becomes a chore almost, the sleep. But God is not only in the nighttime, but he has set aside night for some really amazing things that he does. And to help our kids know that God acts when we sleep and he does things when we sleep. And so as they go to bed, you can ask them, you know, if you still get to pray with your kid at nighttime, to say, you know, what's going on that you want me to really pray about? Because I expect that God will do something overnight tonight, because I see him do it over and over again in the Bible. And if you don't get to sit with them and pray with them, to say, you know what, just in case you don't know, I pray for you every night. And is there anything that you want me in particular to talk to God about? Because I believe that even while you sleep, he's doing things. And so whether it's God guarding you, God guiding you, you can tell them that, you know, if you ever have a decision that you're really struggling to make, I just see over and over in my life and in the Bible that God really helps us make decisions. And you can ask him about it tonight. And sometimes he gives us dreams about it. Sometimes he talks to us as we're in that little bit where we're going to sleep and you have that still small voice. But I trust you and God to make the right decision. And I'm here if you need help. And that sort of constant encouragement, that nighttime is a time for them and God to figure stuff out. It's a time to go away, shut the door, and to have a wonderful time with God, rather than it just being a time of sleep, is a really powerful thing. Your stories are really powerful. Your stories of dreams from God. God gives dreams to us. And to tell stories of, I had this dream last night. I'm not sure if it's a God dream, but this is what I dreamed about. And I don't know. I just feel like God might be saying this to create windows and to frame for them over and over and over again is so important. And if you really feel like they need something specific, to be able to show them from your own experience or from a story that you heard from someone else. There's so many times as parents we're like, I don't have a story of that, but you have a community of people around you that you can find those stories and be like, you know, I heard this weirdest story. This person that I know was struggling at night. She'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like terrified every night. And then she decided what she would do is that she would put like an actual like picture of a sword next to her bed. This is real. This one put a sword next to her bed because she was like, she remembers that God said he's the sword of the spirit. And so she would wake up and she'd be like really scared and her thoughts would go all over the place. And then she'd look at the sword and she'd be like, no, God, I need you to be the sword to cut off everything that's not of you in my head. And then she would just lay back down and then would like imagine a sword in her head. And then any thought that sort of came up, she would be like, nope. And it sounds silly, but it really worked for her. And because you're not telling your kid what to do, you're just telling a story of your friend that you heard about. It gives them an understanding that there are 1,000 different ways of connecting with God in the night, and they can find it too. So tell your kid your stories. Teach them about who God is in the night by talking about it and telling your stories. Help them understand that whether it's fear or whether it's stress, it's not about trying to wrestle yourself to stop thinking about these. It's really about finding your peace. And you can make them feel powerful in doing that. And usually it will match with who they are. If they're writing kids, then suggest that they write stuff to God. There's that verse about whatever's pure, whatever's noble, whatever is right, whatever is true, whatever is praiseworthy, think on these things. This whole list of all these brilliant things to think about. And they can either chat to God about how they authentically feel, or they can just make lists of all the things that is brilliant that they want to think about. Sometimes it's about them grabbing onto peace and just saying, I want to still my heart and God come, and inviting God to do that. There are so many things, whether they're talky, whether they love telling stories to God. I knew this one teenager who absolutely just made up stories. She wanted to be a fiction writer, and so she ended up just telling God stories. And she would tell God stories every night. And like the Arabian Nights Sherazade story, she just made this whole epic thing. And eventually she turned it into a book of a story that she told to God every night. It's about enabling them to be them. They don't have to be anybody different. And you know your kid better than anybody else. And so to say, you know what, if you're struggling, then why not do this? Because you do it anyways. You love doing that. And just help them see how they don't have to be anybody else with them, but them with God, so that they can feel powerful. They can feel like whatever comes their way, they can take their stress and their fear and they can wrestle it to the ground, and they can ask the God of the universe, who knows them better than anything, to help come alongside them and help them find peace together. Do you have any questions? I can't guarantee that I will have amazing, brilliant answers, but I can give you my answer. I thought what I'd do is I'd pray for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to type it in and I'll try and answer it. But I just wanted to encourage you that you are so powerful in the life of your teenager, and your teenagers still need you. And as they're going through the season of finding their peace in sleep, you have so much to offer them and give them. So I'll pray, and then if you have any questions, I'll answer those. And if not, then go get yourself a drink refill, and we'll see how it goes. So let me pray. God, I just thank you so much that you have given us teenagers. It is such a gift to see these teenagers grow and become who they are going to be. And God, it can be a scary time parenting a kid who's getting so big and making big adult-like decisions with huge consequences. And first of all, I just want to pray for all of these parents' hearts, that you would give them your peace, and that you would give them your confidence to be so significant in the life of their children. And I pray for their teenagers' sleep, that you would just go right now and just bring such peace to their minds and their hearts, that they may sleep deeply and they may sleep well with you. And God, I pray right now just that you would give parents grace with their kids, favor, that their kids may listen to them and hear them and tune into what they're saying, that they would feel confident to ask their parents things. And I pray that you would really bless their relationships, parents and teenagers, that they may walk alongside of each other and encourage each other, and that these parents would know the significance that they have every day in the life of their teens. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I don't see anything from Anna, so I'm going to say go to sleep, or go binge watch the next, Game of Thrones I think is out. That's new. Enjoy. If you want to join in next month we're going to be talking about beauty and manliness, and how can we begin to help our teenagers particularly become skilled in dealing with this, and how can we as parents shape a life for our children, which means they can see their value and power in the face of what the world is trying to tell them. But for now, have a good month, And I hope you really enjoy what God is doing in you in the life of your teen this month.